Good morning. Rise and freedom. Microphone on. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Are the sound effects on? I think so too. Yes, they are. Sound effects on. Microphone on. Now will the actual clip sound play? Man, I get so many angry messages from people. Like yesterday on YouTube, they're like, what did they say? Hold on. This has just kind of made me laugh. Austin, once again, you are playing clips without any sound. That CNN versus Trump voter clip was just a minute of frustrating silence. Rah! She did. We're doing the best we can over here. Hey, team, get your act together. Yo, you, camera guy, you, sound guy, you're cool, you're cool. F you, you're cool. Peace, I'm out. Welcome to the Wake Up America show, where our entire staff, you know what? You're all fired. Everybody get out. You know what I'm gonna do from now on so we don't have any more of these technical errors? I'm just gonna fire the whole staff. You know what, everybody? Tell you what, I'm gonna pull a Mitt Romney. I like firing people. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. Everybody get out. Tell you what, I'm running this show now by myself. I could do it much better. We've got a lot to talk about today. George Bush does not like black people, but Donald Trump does. Or at least they like him. Whole little Kanye West there. We're going to speak to Adam Coleman this morning, the founder of Wrong Speak Publications. It's Juneteenth today, so we're going to talk a little bit about the black vote. And speaking of that, did you see that clip that I played yesterday of CNN and how they were freaking out about black voters for Donald Trump? Yes, CNN was looking at the data of the black vote for Donald Trump, and they saw a massive drop-off in the amount of support for Joe Biden compared to Donald Trump. And you know what? I might replay it for you, but we're definitely going to talk about it at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. We're going to speak to Adam Coleman on the show. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Black voters, Donald Trump. It's going to be amazing. At 8 o'clock this morning, it's big brain time. We'll speak to Judge Andrew Napolitano about freedom of speech and privacy laws here in the United States. It's going to be a great interview. Everybody loves big brain time on the Wake Up America show. So we'll hear from Judge Napolitano this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. It's going to be a hoot and a holler. Speaking of hoot, maybe hooters, at 8:30 today, did you know that men prefer young, beautiful women who are able to have kids that are virgins and have no tattoos?
No,
did you know?
Oh, God! No!
Wait.
Please,
What?
no!
Hold on. Wait a minute.
No! No!
What are you upset about?
How dare you?
How dare you? Shut up, Greta. Hold on. That's controversial. Men prefer young, beautiful virgins with no tattoos.
How dare you?
Okay. Well, Austin, why are you bringing this up? Well, it's because yesterday I decided to do a little engagement farming, perhaps, on Twitter. Just kidding. Not saying I would ever do something like that. But we're having conversations with Camellia on the show about the manosphere and the red pill and relationships. And I realized that it's controversial for men to have preferences when it comes to the opposite sex. So women's preferences are celebrated while men's preferences are demonized. When I saw this story about this Bill Belichick character, he's a big guy in football circles. He has this beautiful, he's an older guy, older man, much older, and he's got this much younger, beautiful woman that it's revealed that he was dating. And people are just scandalized. Red flags, red flags, red flags. I thought to myself, well, why are people so concerned? They're both adults, right? Women fought so hard for agency, and we've always been raised to believe that women mature faster than men. And I think that I figured out what's going on. It's that men are not allowed to have preferences when it comes to women. They're supposed to be, men who are older are supposed to have the exact same types of preferences that women have. You're only allowed to date this rule, which is 10 years minus plus 7 or something like that. I don't know. I don't want to listen to women's opinions about who you should or shouldn't date. It should always be legal, of course. But I do find it fascinating that whenever we talk about this, people always accuse you of being a pedophile. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure that dating a 25-year-old woman has no connection whatsoever to pedophilia, and that a 25-year-old woman knows exactly what she's doing if she's dating a man who's 70 years old, if he's 10, 20, 30, 40 years her senior, right? But my recommendation to men, which I think was really triggering to a lot of people online, and we're going to talk about it today at 8:30. My recommendation to men is not to get married. Don't listen to the religious people who tell you you get married. Young men should get married in their 20s. That is a sure pathway to divorce and disaster. Are you going to point at an exception to the rule and say, oh, look, I got married when I was 18 and I'm still with my wife? Okay, great. Yes, not everybody gets to live out on the Amish farm. All right. Some of us have interactions with more than 5 women in our small little hometowns. Okay. We don't live in Amishtown, Pennsylvania or buttfuck, Michigan. Okay. We have experiences with dozens and, maybe perhaps some of us live in cities, right? And so we know thousands of women, right? So it was quite controversial yesterday for me to suggest that men should wait until they're in their 30s, maybe their mid-30s, before they really consider marrying, settling down, finding a woman that they want to date, and that men should get experience. They should date. They should spend time, interacting with women, getting experience, right? And then when they're ready to settle down, they should date a woman, ideally, right? It's not always going to happen, and there's going to be exceptions to the rule, right? Ideally, try and find a woman who's about 7 to 10 years younger than you at a minimum. 7 to 10 years younger at a minimum. Is 5 years fine? Sure. Whatever you want is fine, obviously, of course. But if we're looking out for men, if we're all agreed that men are really getting the short end of the stick in the modern world, and if we want men to be able to be providers for their wives, then we want them right about in that age when they're really going to be at their peak maturity. They're going to be at their peak ability to earn, right in that mid-30s. That's a good time for men to consider getting married. Women should consider getting married in their early to mid-20s. Yes, this was very controversial when I suggested this yesterday, despite this being the best arrangement, in my opinion, for both the man and the woman. But the how dare you, the Greta Thunbergs, the no's, the screaming, the wailing and the gnashing of teeth, but from the bitter clingers, the 4 out of 10s, the Nazi Zoomer Catholic incels, the religious people like, oh, just throw your bodies on the fire, young man. Oh, you get divorced. It's fine. She's just going to take everything you have. And, I think that I was smart. I skipped my first divorce and I waited until I found the right one. I was in my 30s and I met the right one and then I married her, and she was at least 7 years younger than me. Yeah, 7 to 10 is a good starting point. So ideally, at a minimum, you're in your 30s, your wife should be 7 to 10 years younger. Then that way you've got all of those good years where she can have your children and she can be a good wife to you and take care of you. Well, and that was quite controversial because men are not allowed to have preferences. But I have some news for you. Men prefer beautiful young virgins with no tattoos. I'm not even monitoring the chat. I don't even know what's going on over there. Hopefully it's fun. If you're over on the Wake Up America show this morning, don't forget to click that like button. And of course, hit that follow button if you'd like to join us on the Wake Up America show. Every Monday through Friday, we do have a 2-hour live stream. So join us Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. And we have a lot of fun. We talk about news and politics and everything in between. So a couple of headlines, just really quick, but we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about it. You love to see it. 70% of unionized Daily Beast staffers take buyouts as layoffs loom. Where's my evil laugh button? Sometimes I don't even have to hit the evil laugh button because my evil laugh just jumps out. Yes. If you don't know who the Daily Beast is, you're lucky because they're just a leftist attack rag on conservatives and libertarians. And it looks like they're going out of business. Speaking of Washington Post, Jeff Bezos had to deliver a reality check to Washington Post employees who've been complaining about a leadership shakeup that they had recently. Amazon founder and Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos said in a Tuesday staff-wide email that business as usual is no longer an option. See, business as usual is that the Washington Post loses money and that they lose subscribers. The paper has lost half of its subscriber base since 2020, and it was $77 million in the red for 2023. Oh, sad. So sad. So sad. You hate to see it. Actually, you love to see it. We're going to be talking today, this morning, with Adam Coleman at 7:30 a.m. Central Time about Donald Trump and black voters. I've got that clip queued up now. But before we do, speaking of blacks and black voters, let's hear from Cori Bush, Missouri, to Missouri's great shame. Cori Bush, elected from St. Louis, Missouri, about what you would expect from a St. Louis area representative. Here she is yesterday. Of course, she's talking about her time as a pastor and apparently as a faith healer. Take a listen.
You're a pastor.
Yes.
You write about healing through faith. At one point, you came across a woman with, quote, several visible tumors on her torso. Tell me what happened.
So at that time, I, along with a group of friends, we would go out on the street and just meet with people and pray with people and offer them food. And this lady came to us and she had these tumors. I mean, she wanted us to like feel them. And I just remember I put my hand on her and my hand just began to move. And the lumps that were there were no longer there. And she was so happy and she like went on about her day. And I never saw her again.
So you think the tumors disappeared?
I do. And this woman was unhoused. She's someone who, had been sleeping in the shelters and sleeping on the street.
So there's no way we'll ever be able to find her to verify your story. Well, that's quite convenient.
If I can speak a prayer and I can believe what I believe and you believe that this will help you, then why not offer that to people? Because I know prayer has helped me.
As a trained nurse, you're a member of the medical community. How do you think about those spiritual healings versus medical healings?
There's a reporter actually doing their job and pushing back with a probing question. Well done, whoever this blonde lady is.
Yeah, spiritual healing it's a part of what you believe, and the medical healing it's a similar thing because
Drew Van Ronkel says that wasn't a tumor, it was a herpes sore. Hey, those things aren't curable, That's permanent.
I'm going to believe that this treatment that this doctor is giving me is going to help me in my situation. And so as the nurse, I am following the doctor's instructions and giving them whatever the doctor says that they should have. And also for those patients that would say, would you also pray with me? I would pray with them. And so it's the same thing that I would do on the street.
What do you say to people who are likely to disbelieve that story?
They're not the woman that had the tumors.
Interesting. Okay, so this is a bit of a complicated subject for someone like myself, right? So I come from the secular world. I was raised as a Christian, Southern Baptist, fundamentalist, and we believed, or I was raised to believe, in the concept of faith healing. Now, she is getting raked over the coals from the conservative community. Here's Richard Hanania, who I wouldn't define as a conservative. He says, Cori Bush says she cured a homeless woman's tumors by putting her hands on them. Imagine the freak out if Marjorie Taylor Greene says she was a faith healer. Cue the misinformation experts. Now, the left would be yes, I think that if Marjorie Taylor Greene had said that she was, if she had been a pastor and if she had laid hands on people and she had, healed a homeless woman's tumors, I think the left would be reacting in much the same way that the right is reacting right now. Like I saw that Matt Walsh and others were calling out Cori Bush for making these kinds of ridiculous claims. But the problem with that is that at least in the tradition that I was raised in, the idea of faith healing was not out of bounds. Like this claim by Cori Bush that she would lay hands on someone and heal them, absolutely within the bounds of the evangelical faith, the one that I was raised in, right? And lots of Christian traditions may have different traditions or beliefs when it comes to faith healing, for example. I remember very specifically, my grandma was trying to get me to go to remember the Benny Hinn? Is it Benny Hinn? Who was the guy that would like beat you and he would beat you with his jacket, right? And then you would fall over and you would be healed, right? So yes, very much a tradition in evangelical circles. When people say this is pathetic, right? Is it just because she's a Democrat? Because I'm pretty sure that if a Republican conservative who was a pastor said that they had laid hands on someone and had healed them, that they would say that that was a legitimate act of their faith in the word of God. So, I mean, somebody fill me in here. Like, is it ridiculous because she is a Democrat? Because I'm pretty sure this is right in line. Now, of course, who else healed people by laying hands on them? Jesus Christ of Nazareth himself. So a lot of Christians believe that, through Jesus and through faith that they can put their hands on someone and heal them. Quite frankly, I find those claims to be outlandish. I didn't go with Grandma to Benny Hinn for that reason. Did I ask my grandmother to pray for me? Absolutely, certainly. Put her hands on me? Sure. I think I remember my mother at one point wanted to put her hands on my brother and pray for him because she believed that someone at church who had put her hands on him had actually put a demon inside of him, and then she wanted to pray the demon out, and it was kind of an awkward moment growing up as we sort of navigated the faith. And, when you're in that Southern Baptist, Methodist sort of fundamentalist tradition growing up in the 80s and 90s, remember, it was very much that time of the satanic panic. When there was the demons and the dungeons and the dragons, and Austin was listening to Metallica with the songs about bitches and blood and everybody, and you would go to Burger King and you would open up the Jack Chick tracks and they would show God casting people into hell. It was like, right. So we're very much children of that era. But the idea of laying hands on someone and healing them for the Christian tradition, I think that methinks that the right-wing Christians doth protest too much, because I'm pretty sure that what Cori Bush said is completely in line with the Christian tradition of faith healing. So is it because she's black? I'm not quite sure. I'm honestly curious about your thoughts on that. Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Again, you can text the show at 573-319-1586. Blutreich says, if you look through the Bible, plenty of people laid hands on people who were sick and they were healed. And Jesus even said that his disciples would be able to lay hands on people and heal them. Shadow Collector says it's ridiculous because when you make a claim of healing, producing the healed person is the bare minimum. Interesting. Okay, well, there is that. There have been humongous amounts of faith healings that have happened over the years. And people who have claimed that they, were blind and now they can see, or they couldn't walk, or they can't. But there have been, as my brother Justin in the chat noted, there have not been any cases of amputees who have had their limbs regrown. So definitely, why does God hate amputees? These are the questions that people like myself have to ask, unfortunately, because I would love to live in a world where people really could have those kinds of miracles happen to them. Well, don't you think that when I was, 15 years old and my mother was stricken with cancer, that I absolutely was praying every day for her to be healed? Absolutely did. But it's an interesting question that we have to ask ourselves. Do these things happen randomly as a matter of chance, or is it all part of God's plan? God's plan. God's plan. Cecilia H says, it is a Protestant thing. Yes, it is. Not very common to see it among Catholics. Many grifters in the modern Christian era do stuff like that. Peterson Justin, my brother, says Catholics do have some of it, but it's usually a saint that does the healing, not a mortal human. Our Lady of Lourdes, for example. Thank you, Justin, for that interjection. Dad Bods Baboom says it's because she's a hypocritical politician once again, trying to convince people to vote for her because she's, quote, different and, quote, cares about the poor. Miracles do happen, says Shadow Collector. Mr. Beast cured the blind, and he didn't invoke godly powers doing it. Good stuff, guys. Very thoughtful comments. Okay, let's watch that CNN segment again really quick before we get Adam Coleman in there. What do you guys say? Here we go.
CNN senior data reporter Harry Enton is with us. So where does the race stand among African-American voters right now?
Yeah,
Where does the race stand? This is going to be fun.
keep looking for this to change, to go back to a historical norm, and it simply put has not yet. So this is the margin, or Biden and Trump among black voters, compare where we were at this point in 2020, compare where we are now. You know, at this point, look at this. In 2020, Joe Biden was getting 86% of the African-American vote. Look at where it is now. It's 70%. That's a 16-point drop, John. And more than that, it's not just that Joe Biden is losing ground, it's that Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. And again, John, I keep looking for signs that this is going to go back to normal, and I don't see it yet in the polling. If anything, right now we're careening towards a historic performance for a Republican presidential candidate, the likes of which we have not seen in 6 decades.
And when you dig into this number here, what is the makeup of that number?
This is where we get very interesting. So I decided to dive deeper into the crosstabs, figure out where is it that Joe Biden is truly struggling among black voters. All right, so this is black voters, Biden versus Trump margin. Look at black voters age 50 and older, and you'll see, look, Joe Biden was leading amongst this group at this point by 83 points back in 2020. Now it's 74 points. So yeah, a slight decline in that margin, but nothing out of this world. Look at black voters under the age of 50. Holy cow, folks. Holy cow. Look at this. Joe Biden was up by 80 points among this group back at this point in 2020. Look at where that margin has careened down towards. It's now just, get this, 37 points. That lead has dropped by more than half, Mr. Berman. I just never seen anything like this. I'm like speechless, because you always look at history and you go, okay, this is a historic moment. If this polling is anywhere near correct, we
You love to see it. All right, so here's the news. If you want to see today's Paradox documentary, instead of watching commercials, you've got to get those Rumble Rant donations in. We are, I believe, looks like $0 towards our $60 goal so far. So get those Rumble Rant donations in, or head to ap4libertyshop.com so you don't have to watch commercials like you have next. Coming up after the commercials, Adam Coleman joins us of Wrong Speak Publication to talk about Juneteenth, his thoughts on it, and black voters coming out for Donald Trump on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com.
The Cantina Group, this is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any Anytime you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Glad and thankful to have you here. If you're enjoying the show so far today, don't forget to click that like button. If it's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, click the follow button before you leave today. That way we can hang out again. The Wake Up America show does stream live 5 days a week, Mondays through Fridays, from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. It's a 2-hour tour de force of economic freedom and personal liberty. We'd love to make friends and hang out with you some more. So before you leave, click that follow button, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning. We've got lots of great content and, of course, incredible guests. Coming up a little later on the show, Judge Andrew Napolitano presides. We'll talk to him at 8 a.m. It's big brain time with Judge Napolitano for his regular Wednesday spot, so you don't want to miss that. Make sure that if you have to do some errands, you come back at a minimum at 8. But you don't want to leave right now, because my next guest is one of the absolute tip top to discuss the next topic, which is that CNN segment I played just a few minutes ago, just in case you missed it. They're freaking out about the black vote migrating its way over from the Democrats to potentially Donald Trump this year. Today is Juneteenth, after all, so this is the conversation that needs to be had. Joining us now is the founder of Wrong Speak publication, Adam Coleman. He's joining us live. Good morning, Adam. Welcome to the Wake Up America show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Adam, I asked you this during the break, but I'd love it if you just reiterate your thoughts, because Juneteenth as a holiday, which is supposed to commemorate the day that the last Black American had heard about their emancipation in the state of Texas after the Civil War. So to commemorate this holiday sounds like a wonderful day, but you seem to think that it has unfortunately grown too politicized?
Yeah. Just like everything these days, anything that one administration does is bad or good, depending on what side you stand on. The truth of the matter is that this is a holiday that was celebrated specifically in Texas, and I've heard in surrounding states as well. But it was just another day of celebration. People have barbecues and things of that nature. But the point behind it was to celebrate freedom. And some people make the claim we're not all truly free until the last person is actually set free. And so I think, to me, celebrating freedom is the most American thing you can possibly do. That's what we're all about. So I don't see the downside to celebrating freedom in America. And this is supposed to be an aspect of American history that we're supposed to abhor, slavery. And so, yeah, why not celebrate, this particular event? Now, it became politicized, obviously, because Joe Biden put it forward, and we know how many of the Democrats can be very, let's say, condescending or very racially motivated in a negative sense, in my opinion, when it comes to different things. But the truth of the matter is that it was going to happen no matter who was president. It was already set in motion when Trump was in office. And so I question sometimes, if Trump had won his reelection, would people on the right be saying the things that they're saying about Juneteenth because Trump was the one who was in office? Would they care? And honestly, I think politics is so partisan that people can't look at the substance of most things, that they would probably love it. That Trump did, yeah, see how much Trump loves black people, right? They'd be playing the same game. So I look at the substance of the holiday. The holiday in itself is about celebrating freedom. Full stop. That's it.
Love to hear that, Adam. Honestly, that's a great way to look at it. I actually gave a speech at a Juneteenth celebration in 2018 here in Missouri. I was running for the U.S. Senate, and boy, those people couldn't believe that a white Republican man had showed up to the Juneteenth barbecue. Had showed up to the barbecue to talk to them about civil rights and civil liberties, and what makes a libertarian Republican different from a conservative Republican, and honestly, I had a wonderful day. That was in Joplin, Missouri. I'll never forget it. It was a great experience, and I learned a lot as well about the holidays. So I'm really glad and thankful that you're here, Adam, so that we can have these kinds of conversations, because I feel like I can be frank with you and transparent, and I appreciate that you mentioned that black voters become political pawns no matter which political party it is. However, it is true, a historic truth, that the Republican Party was the party of freeing the slaves. It is true that the Democratic Party was the party of the KKK and of slavery and of Jim Crow. Is it not?
These things are true. But I think much in the same way, we can look at the roots of something, but we also have to look at where we are today. And where we are today is that the Republican Party pretends that Black Americans don't exist from a voter standpoint. Unfortunately, some do, but very, very few do. And I understand that from a logistical and financial standpoint, they don't compete in the areas where Black Americans live. And coincidentally, those areas tend to be cities. So every time we talk about Democrat-controlled cities, honestly, it's an admission of failure by the Republican Party because they don't try to compete there, right? They much rather go in areas and districts or redraw districts to gain an advantage rather than going out and actually gaining votes. And they're unwilling to risk losing, which, like I said, from a financial standpoint, I understand there's no guaranteed dollars in running for office. But at the same time, when you do this decade after decade after decade, and you wonder why every presidential race you lose when 2 cities are counted in a given state, and that's it, you have to start looking at the alternatives. So for me, it's not even necessarily about how do you win back Black voters, it's how do you win back the majority of voters? Because majority of voters in any given state live within the cities. And if you neglect the cities, well, by coincidence, you're neglecting Black American voters. So I think it's one and the same.
Considering what you just said then, Adam, was it surprising to you to see that video that I shared with you on CNN where they were running the numbers that so many potential Black voters are considering voting for Donald Trump in this election? It would seem, as juxtaposed with what you said right there, we wouldn't be seeing the kind of attrition, at least in the polls, that we're seeing.
It doesn't surprise me. However, I don't want people to think there's too much into this. I don't want people to think that the next election is going to go 50% to Donald Trump from Black voters. I think there's going to be an increase. And actually, I'm working on a piece for the New York Post where I was talking to 7 Black voters in Georgia, all professionals, all with different viewpoints on the election. But the one thing that became very clear throughout all of them, there were some commonalities between them, whether they were 100% for Joe Biden or 100% for Donald Trump. When I asked the question, the Black Americans around you, when you talk politics, whether it's friends or family, what's their viewpoints? Is it, no, they're the same as you? And all of them said that they're mixed. And I find that very interesting, that it wasn't solid. And the reason why it's mixed is because they do not like the performance of Joe Biden, not to be confused of supporting Donald Trump. And so, when I asked the question as far as what are your top 2 issues that the reason why you're voting the way you're voting, and they all say the top 2 issues for them, actually, I want to say 5 out of 7, if I remember correctly, said that one of the top 2 issues was actually student loan debt. And so for me, I'm thinking like this is an opportunity for Donald Trump to find some sort of way to show some sort of Republican-esque support or alleviation for student loan debt, and many Black Americans can feel this relief, or some sort of way to try to fix the system, because it's not, in my opinion, it's not just, oh, just wipe away the debt and everything is good. How about a logical step forward is saying no more interest? Many people want to pay back what they took out, but the interest is killing them. And I think that would be a massive step forward if Donald Trump was to propose something like that, rather than just wiping away the debt, because it doesn't really go away. It just gets transferred. So, I thought these particular conversations, as far as seeing that it's not just black and white, or actually it's not just one direction, as we're always told, that, yeah, Democrat or bust, Biden or bust. Even if I talk to that person who was like Biden and that's it, always been a Democrat voter, almost every person I talked to who was mixed was Democrat historical voter. And they're mixed, and their friends and families are mixed, and they're unsure. So we're months away from the election, but I think this is an opportunity for Donald Trump to seize if he plays this right.
There's something about identity politics, which is very potent in our modern political sphere. In gathering together the black vote as a voting bloc, the Democrats win elections time and time again in Atlanta, in the suburbs of Atlanta, and in these cities that are blue dominated, if you will. And what we've sort of seen in the Republican Party is what you might call an antibiotic response almost to identity politics, while they still engage in the same kind of tokenism that the left does as well. Recently, we've seen that where it's sort of tokenism gone wrong with Candace Owens, for example, where she became sort of a darling in Republican circles for being a black conservative that left the left and spoke out against them. But now she's sort of been cast out of these circles because she sort of revealed herself to be not a fan of the people with the tiny hats, if you will. So
Right.
So identity politics is powerful, but that has also led to the rise of white supremacy, right? Where you have, the Nick Fuenteses of the world and the Groypers who are out there also sort of proudly, hailing the white boy summer, if you will. I mean, how do you sort of square that circle where there does seem to be a double standard in some ways when it comes to the concept of black pride and pride in your culture and your race that is mainstream, acceptable, Hollywood television movies celebrate it, but when you see it on the right and it becomes white supremacy, or it's something as intolerable or something disgusting. How do you kind of look at, when you look at from this bird's eye view of things on identity politics, how do you view black Americans voting as a bloc and then white Americans voting as a bloc? How do you kind of like square these circles? How do you look at identity politics in the modern sphere?
I think that it's become perverse. I think that's the best word to use. I think that when it comes to political blocs, this idea that we all vote a particular way simply because of our identity and not because there are overlaps, it lends to thinking that, and my complaints about Democrats is thinking that, well, Black Americans are different and they require different things. But yet, I just told you, I had conversations with 7 Black Americans, all professionals, and their issues are the same type of issues that any American would have who's a professional, right? Student loan debt, that's a big issue, whether it's for them or for people that they know, other professionals. None of them said that racism is the #1 issue as to why they're voting the way they're voting, right? And it's this idea that once you have these different political blocs, that these people are different. You have to treat them differently. They have different requirements. And when it comes down to it, many of their requirements are much of the same. We all care about our safety. We all care about our economics. And honestly, I think economics is the number one driving force for political votes. I know so many people who didn't like Donald Trump, but when the economy was doing great, I heard them saying, man, I vote for Donald Trump, right? Because their pockets are good. Suddenly their political affiliation doesn't matter if the money is going, if it's flowing right. So I think this usage of identity politics on the right is much as a reaction to what's happened on the left. 2020 became the most perverse year for identity politics perpetrated by the Democratic Party, so much so that is part of the reason why I disassociated with the Democratic Party. However, the reaction from the political right shouldn't be, well, if they take on Black people, then we'll take on white people, right? It's not to do that, but that's not what we do in politics. We do the opposite. So if they say jump, we say squat. Left, they go right. Everybody just does the opposite to show their way that they're different than the opposition. But that is a poisonous way to move about anything. What happened to principles? Well, there aren't that many principles anymore. It depends, right?
How do you think, Adam,
yeah.
sorry to cut you off, but there's so much to discuss. No. How do you think someone like myself should react to what I perceive to be an attack on my race and my culture by the prevailing culture here in the United States? So, for example, when I watch television commercials, it seems as if men like myself of my particular ethnicity are being denigrated. I feel hostility of the prevailing culture of the United States against me and myself for who I am and my intrinsic qualities, of which I cannot change, which I think Black people might understand. But how should someone like myself respond to what I perceive to be attacks on my intrinsic traits without going full incel Nick Fuentes Groyper?
Well, for one, I think we should identify who's doing what. And when you talk about the media, when you talk about commercials, for example, it's coming from a particular area. So we're talking about an ideology. And so that's why it's important to criticize the ideology, but also criticize the ideology, not specifically because it affects you for someone who is white, but because it affects you in a discriminatory way. Because discrimination is bad, not just discrimination against Black people or discrimination against white people. So I agree that there's discriminatory factors facing certain white Americans in certain situations because there's an ideological, there's a perpetual ideological bent that's happening within our media. But the opposite reaction isn't to say, well, then we should uplift white people and we should highlight being white as being great because they're doing the opposite.
Right. But I take it that you're probably you're probably in favor of scrapping things like diversity, equity, and inclusion standards for universities and for corporations and for government.
Correct, because discrimination is bad. For me, what we were supposed to learn from the civil rights era was that discrimination is bad, not that discriminating against Black people is bad. Discrimination in itself is bad. And so when you say, well, we're just going to uplift someone else in spite of someone else, to me, that's not good. Because, all right, let's say right now I accept DEI and I get a handout. Well, who's to say in 20, 30 years, they say, listen, we got to overcorrect. We uplifted too many Black people. Now we need to cut them out. Too many Blacks already in this thing, right? So when you start practicing discrimination, you have no idea when it's going to end. And so that's why I'm full stop. Discrimination is bad no matter who it affects.
Adam, in 2016, when I campaigned for president of the United States, Gary Johnson and I were involved in some very high-profile debates, specifically centered around the question of the Civil Rights Act, specifically around Title II of the Civil Rights Act. And I achieved no small semblance of fame, perhaps infamy amongst some people, for my famous quote that you shouldn't be forced to bake the Nazi cake. It was this discussion about the question of private property, and everyone agrees that the government should not be allowed to discriminate on the basis of race or gender or sexuality or what have you. Same when it comes to universities. But on the question of private property, I think this really becomes a stickier question, right, when we're discussing cakes, because I defended the belief that private property owners like Christians who I don't agree with, by the way, when it comes to their views on gay marriage or adult relationships between two men or two women or what have you. They should not be forced to bake the cake for the gay wedding. That was my argument. But Gary Johnson differed. He argued that because the Civil Rights Act was passed, and specifically Title II was passed, that we should enforce laws that prevent business owners of private businesses from being racist on their own private property. I mean, now we're looking back at the era of Jim Crow, when blacks couldn't sit at lunch counters and they couldn't get a hotel room in the South at the time. So I wonder what your feeling is about that, Adam. Do you have like a more nuanced take when it comes to that question? Do you think that private property owners should be allowed to discriminate for whatever reason that they choose? I mean, should the Christian baker have to bake the Nazi cake, I guess is what I'm asking you in this sense.
It's not something that I think about often, but if I'm to give a comment on it, I lean more in your direction. And the reason I say that is because when I think about the civil rights era, people focus on the wrong thing. The issue wasn't that some diner didn't want to have Black people dining there or they wanted to come through a separate entrance, but it was that it was enforced by the government that they must do these things. They must be separate. They cannot integrate. And that's the point. So it's to presume that all businesses want exactly this. Whereas would it be a bad presumption that there are some businesses who didn't care if they had Black patrons or white patrons, didn't care if they came through the same doorway, didn't care that they drank from the same water fountain, right? It's the presumption that the private businesses agree with the government. So if we were to go back into the Jim Crow era and alleviate it, which we did, and suddenly the South grew accepting that people can drink from the same water fountain and can enter the same entrances over a period of time because the culture was shifted because the government stopped enforcing these things. So this idea that, well, if we don't have it as a law, then people won't behave this way. Well, actually, by having it as a law to discriminate, people were forced to behave this way, whether they agreed with it or not. So I actually agree more with your stance. We should not force people to adhere to certain things. But we also shouldn't have the government be such strong arbiters as to the behavior of mankind, as far as like in the private industry. The government should be more hands-off. And honestly, I believe that more people, especially if you talk about a business, cares about the bottom line than the color of the hand that hands them the money.
Yeah, I agree, Adam, and it's really refreshing to hear someone like yourself say something like that. I'd love to see a column from you about that specific topic, just because I think that there's so much misunderstanding in the modern context of the application of the Civil Rights Act to private property, that people just always conflate government institutions with private institutions. And nowadays, more than ever, people conflate corporations with government, in large part because they tend to be in bed with one another with the rise of sort of the corporate state, if you will, which I can understand. Right. But when it comes to the question of private property, I do think that it's better, just like when it comes to free speech on X, for example. Like, it's better that we allow people to show us who they truly are, so that we can know who we should avoid and we know what people believe. Because I think that when you drive opinions like these underground, I think like Nick Fuentes, for example, it made him more popular than he was banned and censored and suppressed. He probably would have been a flash in the pan at this point, and probably we wouldn't even be discussing him today if he had not been censored and suppressed and banned from so many platforms. So at least that's my take on it. Would you say that you agree then generally with that statement?
Yes, he became the victim of censorship, supposedly the victim of censorship. And so, and this is part of the simplistic mindset when it comes to anything political, is that whoever my enemy hates, I must love, right? And so if the left-wing social media apparatus hates Nick Fuentes, well, we must hear him out because they're abandoning him for some reason. Why? Because they banned grandma for posting a Trump picture, right? So Nick Fuentes and your grandma must be the same type of victim. So let's hear him out. You know, it's that kind of simplistic thinking. We have to discern.
I love this, Adam. I'm running out of time, but I got one last question to ask you. Did you see that influencer chick who went viral the other day for saying the N-word, and now she's the darling of the conservative right? Did you have a strong take? Do you have a strong take on that, or white people saying the N-word in general, maybe in the context of singing a rap song?
None of it surprises me. Especially the influencer space, none of it surprises me. As much as they complain about identity politics, they engage in it just as much as the left does. The woke left is much like the woke right. They have more in common than they do with me.
Adam, do you give out N-word passes?
I do not give out N-word passes because I do not control people's speech. If you want to say it, but I have no control over how people react to it.
There we go. Adam Coleman from Wrong Speak Publication. He's a great writer over at New York Post. You should follow him on X at wrong_speak, I think is the correct handle. Right, Adam?
Yep, wrong_speak.
Anything else you want to share with our listeners or plug before we let you go, sir?
Yeah, check out my Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com.
Adam B. Coleman at substack.com. We'll make sure to drop that in the chat for you. Adam, great conversation. Happy Juneteenth. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your candor, and we hope to have you back again very soon, sir.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. Adam Coleman, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever you call yourself. This is a libertarian show. After all, the Wake Up America show's bonus content has been unlocked. Thank you, Robbie Thurman and Andy Opperman. Andy got himself a cool pair of those neon slides. So it's this neon retro sort of theme that we go for with the Wake Up America show. I actually designed this shirt myself. This one's called the Gun Runnin' Shortstop that you can get exclusively at apforlibertyshop.com. I took the time. I found all the little neon machine guns, and then I arranged them in a pattern, and I put them on a bunch of stuff. Andy got the really cool flip-flops that I designed with this, but there's a whole collection of neon retro firearms, t-shirts, and shoes, and all kinds of fun stuff at apforlibertyshop.com. So if you like the shirt that I'm wearing today, you can only get this exclusively at apforlibertyshop.com. This one's called the Gun Runnin' Shortstop. It's definitely one of our best sellers. Check that out at apforlibertyshop.com. Did you guys enjoy that conversation with Adam Coleman? Do you get conversations like that in the mainstream media? You don't even really get many conversations like that in the alternative media. You're really only going to get conversations like that here on the Wake Up America show. Did you guys think that I was going to say the N-word? I didn't. I kind of wanted to, right? He didn't give me the N-word pass. That's why. Just kidding. Since you've unlocked the bonus content, you get to watch it while we go get my good friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Let's talk to him about Juneteenth and civil rights and Nazi cakes and all that fun stuff. Don't go away. Enjoy our little bonus mini documentary about a paradox, a most intriguing paradox. A paradox on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Wake Up America show, our bonus content focuses on political and philosophical paradoxes. Today we look at the Ship of Theseus thought experiment. The Ship of Theseus, also known as Theseus's paradox, is a thought experiment that has fascinated scholars for centuries. It raises compelling questions about identity over time. Imagine a ship where each part is gradually replaced. Is it still the same ship? Theseus was a young prince in Athens, raised away from the kingdom. Upon learning his true identity, he set out to claim his birthright. Discovering his father paid tribute to Crete, Theseus volunteered to end the cruel practice of sending children to the Minotaur. Theseus embarked on the ship with other tributes and met Princess Ariadne of Crete. She gave him a ball of thread and a sword to navigate the labyrinth and slay the Minotaur. Theseus succeeded, saving the children and fleeing with Ariadne. However, at the island of Naxos, Theseus left Ariadne behind. Returning to Athens, he forgot to change the ship's sails from black to white, causing his father to believe he had died. In despair, King Aegeus threw himself into the sea. Theseus became king of Athens. The ship, now known as the Ship of Theseus, was preserved as a monument.
Over time, its parts were replaced as they decayed, leading philosophers to question if it remained the same ship. Philosophers like Heraclitus and Plato debated the paradox. Plutarch describes how the ship, with all planks replaced, became a classic example of the identity puzzle. Is it the same ship if no original part remains? The thought experiment extends beyond inanimate objects to living beings. For instance, consider two photos of a person at different ages. How is the person in the photos the same, and how are they different if their cells regenerate over time? Heraclitus argued that everything is in flux, suggesting that identity is fluid. John Locke introduced the idea that memory links us to our past selves, proposing that identity is tied to memory rather than physical continuity. Thomas Hobbes added complexity by positing a second ship made from the discarded original planks. Which ship is the true ship of Theseus? This introduces the theory of transitivity, yet it complicates the matter further. Hobbes' ideas echo Plato's theory in the Parmenides, where one cannot be other or the same to itself or another. This argument adds depth to the duality of identity, a theme that continues to intrigue modern thinkers. The ship of Theseus thought experiment appears in contemporary culture, notably in the TV series WandaVision. The show explores identity through the character Vision, who has a new body but retains old memories, and another with original parts but no memories. In WandaVision, Vision and White Vision discuss the paradox. Vision summarizes the thought experiment, questioning the identity of the ship with replaced planks. This mirrors Plutarch's ancient description, showing the enduring relevance of the paradox. The show further explores Hobbes's theory. Vision and White Vision discuss the idea of reassembling a ship from old parts, concluding that neither is the true ship. Both are the true ship, which parallels their own identities. Vision proposes that perhaps memories, the wear and tear, constitute the true identity. This suggests that the original ship, or vision, exists only in memory, aligning with Locke's theory that memory creates identity. WandaVision romanticizes the philosophical debate, underscoring that the paradox continues to engage minds from antiquity to today. The ship of Theseus remains a vital topic in discussions about identity, prompting reflection and exploration across generations.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm Austin Peterson. Glad and thankful to have you here. I hope you enjoyed that mini documentary. Every day, the Wake Up America show produces a 5-minute bonus content mini documentary. Sometimes it's about history. This week, the Wake Up America show's theme are political and philosophical paradoxes. And if you've never heard of the paradox of Theseus's ship, then I hope that that might inspire you to find out a little bit more as we ask the question, who are we? It's a really interesting little mini documentary. And if you want to talk about it more, you can send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. And for those who were wondering, what was that song that I was singing as we went to the commercial break earlier? That was from the Pirates of Penzance. Yes. Gilbert and Sullivan, right? A paradox, a most intriguing paradox. All right, well, paradoxically, we go from one man of one ethnicity to one man of another ethnicity. It's not Italian-American discrimination, as they say in The Sopranos. We're going to talk about a different kind of discrimination, but Italians were absolutely discriminated against in this country. Most people, when they think about the Civil Rights Act, they think about Black Americans. But whether you're Irish or Italian or Jewish or Black, the history of discrimination spans a wide array of races and ethnicities. Joining us now is a man who is on every single government list that there possibly could be. One day I hope to be just like him. Judge Andrew Napolitano, the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, joining us live right now. Good morning, Judge. Got any visits from the feds lately?
No, but I am humming to myself. I am the very model of a modern major general.
With vegetable, animal, and mineral.
Right. I love Gilbert and Sullivan. I had a very wealthy friend who used to bring the Gilbert and Sullivan crew from the Metropolitan Opera to perform at his home.
Wow. That must have been fun.
I saw the Pirates of Penzance. Oh, and I forget what other one I saw there as well. It was spectacular. But we stray.
A fantastic show. Of course, Judge. Love to talk to you about operettas and musical theater some another time. Let's talk a little bit about discrimination here in the United States. Italians were legitimately discriminated against here in the United States, and there's a long history of that. But it really doesn't get a lot of attention when we talk about it in history class. But that was a legitimate form of discrimination that did occur against people like yourself.
Well, there's a right to discriminate. There's a right to make any judgment you want about who uses your property, and there's a right to choose your customers. If store A won't serve Italians or Jews or blacks, store B will open up across the street and compete with them, and the free market will address that. The government failed to understand that and still fails to understand it when it claims it can come onto our private property and tell us who our customers are and who our clients are and how we have to make decisions. We discriminate every day. I choose a spouse who's the same ethnicity that I am. That's an act of discrimination, but it's none of the government's business. Choices are discrimination is making choices, and we have the right to make these free choices. Can the state discriminate on the basis of race or ethnicity? No, because the 14th Amendment prohibits it. Can the state prohibit private people from doing so? No, because the 9th Amendment protects your right to discriminate. Does the government understand this? No. The Civil Rights Act of 64 is a catastrophe, a disaster, because of its intrusion of the federal footprint onto private property.
Judge, do you have to carry a wheelbarrow around with you at all times in order to transport those massive cojones that you have when you say things like that?
I did get in trouble. Stossel and I both got in trouble for making this argument on Fox one day at the same day. The boss called us, then he closed the door and he goes, I think you're right, but we can't say it.
I mean, these are important conversations. The more you're likely that you're not supposed to say something, probably the more likely that it needs to be discussed, Judge.
Absolutely.
And of course, you're a constitutional lawyer, Judge. You're an attorney. You've been a judge. So your knowledge of the law far outstrips mine. But help me to remember, Judge, from history class in the 1960s, the argument for the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, specifically Title II, the reason why the Congress felt it necessary to include the infringement on private property was that the argument being made was that in the South, that the blacks were not allowed to stay at hotels and not allowed to eat at lunch counters. And so what predicament African Americans found themselves in at the time was that they would have to drive hours and hours to get themselves out of the South entirely, taking their entire families with them to try and find a place that would actually house them for the evening, because there was no room at the inn, as they might say. And that was the argument for the infringement on private property. Is that correct?
That's the stated argument for the infringement on private property. The true reason for the infringement on private property is to get LBJ and the Democrats elected in 1964. I mean, you could argue, well, that's the way the system works. The government does what it thinks is popular. Okay, the government does what it thinks is popular, even if it tramples the natural rights, the property rights of other people. But yes, that is the argument. The Civil Rights Act of 64 purports to be grounded in the Commerce Clause. And the argument is that by regulating private property, whether it's a restaurant or a motel, the government enhanced commerce by making it easier for people to travel on federal highways in the South. You think that's what James Madison had in mind when he wrote the Commerce Clause, that it would reach into private property? Of course not. But now this is taken for granted. And the Civil Rights Act of 64 is just part of our culture. And it's not even part of our history. It's just part of our contemporary existence. And because they use the word gender instead of the word, because they use the word sex instead of the word gender, it's now been extended to cover sexual orientation, even though the Congress expressly rejected twice the sexual orientation aspect of it in 1964. So this is an example of how government grows and private property shrinks. Is discrimination based on race a good thing? No, of course not. These are immutable characteristics of birth, but these are choices that we all have the right to make. Some ethnicities overcame this without the help of the government. Other ethnicities overcame it with the help of the government, and now we're stuck. We're stuck with this.
To just say on a personal note, Judge, that being a young white man growing up in the Midwest, right? Nothing too special, but of course you don't experience any kind of a discrimination truly against yourself. And I never truly, experienced the kind of multiculturalism that I did until I moved to New York City after college in 2005. Finally starting to come into contact with, meeting your first Jewish person, right? There are no Jewish people in Peculiar, Missouri, where I grew up, right? We had one black person, I think, in my graduating class. So you go through a bit of a culture shock. And now I actually find myself having to deal with these problems and questions more, because having married a Jewish wife, this now means that I will have a Jewish child, at least from the technical connotations of the Jewish religion and of their ethnicity and culture. And so when I see college students on college campuses out there saying things like "kill the Jews, kill the Zionists" and things like that, I have to think, okay, now this actually affects me. We're talking about what is soon to be my daughter. But I mean, I wonder if you, as an Italian man, have you ever experienced any kind of a discrimination because of your ethnicity, Judge, or maybe your family did? I wonder if you have any personal stories about that and how you dealt with it.
If I experienced it, I was unaware of it. My multiculturalism came as an undergraduate at Princeton. There were 5 Italian Americans in my class. 2 of them, Sam Alito and me. There were about 90 African Americans in the class. In those days, we were divided by ideology, pro-Vietnam, anti-Vietnam. We were divided by things like that in that era rather than race. But the multiculturalism, I welcomed it. I don't know if they welcomed me, but I didn't perceive any overt or even subtle discrimination. This argument I was kidding about being called into Roger Ailes' office. It's a true story. But this argument that the government can't reach private property, this touches a raw nerve. This is the third rail of American politics. When you make this argument, people think you're a racist. Barry Goldwater made the most non-racial attack on the Civil Rights Act of 64 on the floor of the United States Senate. There wasn't a racist bone in his body, but he made the property rights, the defense of property rights attack on the Civil Rights Act of 64. He, of course, was excoriated for it by the Democrats, particularly when he ran for president later that year. But it shouldn't be considered a bad thing to defend property rights, because the ownership of property, which means the right to use it as you see fit, the right to hypothecate it, sell it, lease it, rent it, and the most important right, the right to exclude anyone, the right to exclude anyone for any reason, including the government. Those rights are natural rights that come from our humanity, and the government can't interfere with them for a political or cultural or social reason. It can only interfere with them if we have violated somebody else's natural rights, and a jury has found us guilty of that. That is at least the natural rights theory of the Constitution. This is not me. This is James Madison. This is the guy that wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Judge, I love hearing you say all these things, and this just reminds me of how much our minds are so similar in so many ways. Because I was literally going to ask you about Barry Goldwater and the 1964 Civil Rights Act and his non-racial attack on it, and then refer to James Madison. But you did all of that, and so now I have to go to a next question. I'm not even sure how to formulate this next question, Judge, because in one way, because I don't want to offend you, and then in another way, because it's sort of a tricky and complicated question. Because when we talk about discrimination in the United States, there's been discrimination not just on the basis of race or ethnicity, but on the basis of religion. And you and I have had conversations, Judge, about imperialist Catholics who do not share your libertarian views, and you being sort of an outlier in your faith, adhering to a more libertarian tradition that is at odds with the current Pope Francis, who is a Jesuit, but very much at odds with the sort of what's the word that I'm looking for? The more trend-based imperialist Catholic tradition that has become very popular on the right, personified by the senior senator from Missouri, whose name we shall not speak, of the progressive Republican right, the populist Republican right, who adhere to a concept of the United States as a Christian nation. And they argue that the United States was founded as such, that the United States was founded as a Christian nation, Judge. But I would remind them that, yes, the United States was founded as a Christian nation, but not a Catholic nation. That the founding fathers and that the United States was very clearly discriminatory towards people of your particular faith until the 1960s. And there seems to be a sort of a revisionist history of some belief that the United States should return to how the founding fathers envisioned this country, which, if we did, of course, would exclude people of your particular faith. Isn't that the case?
I think these Christian nationalists, typified by the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the senior senator from Missouri, are extremely dangerous to human liberty by attempting to foist upon us their understanding of cultural mores. And yes, you're exactly right. It would exclude me. It would exclude the Jewish people. It would exclude Thomas Jefferson, who said, "My own mind is my own God." He was a deist. He wasn't a Christian. It would exclude a lot of people, or it would bring about a sort of modern day inquisition in which your life is made miserable until you conform to their understanding of religion. The separation of church and state, also Madison's idea, is a brilliant and gifted manifestation of human freedom. I have a sister-in-law who's getting a master's in theology, and she texts me. We text each other a lot over what's going on in her theology class. So she said, somebody in the theology class said, "Your brother-in-law can't be Catholic because he's libertarian." And I went through this long list of why this person was wrong. And then I said, "I really don't know what's in your fellow student's mind, but I will pray for him." She goes, "It wasn't one of my students. It was the professor." Okay, I still pray for him.
It's difficult for me, as like Jefferson, something closer to a deist, right? Considering that I am open to the possibility that there is a God in the universe, but I sort of am naturally repelled because of my libertarian instincts away from this imperialist Catholic doctrine, which attempts to impose a Christian nationalist agenda on the United States, as if we haven't always been, to some extent, pluralist in the views of the United States.
I know you don't want to talk about him, and neither do I, but is the senior senator from Missouri Catholic?
Yes.
Oh, good Lord.
Which is
Oy,
fascinating.
oy, oy.
But what's so fascinating is that
he embraces a bastardized version of Catholicism, if ever there was one. I'm stunned to learn that any Christian nationalists are Catholic, because if and when the Christian nationalists take over, the Catholics will be the first people to go.
I mean, it's fascinating too, because our junior senator from Missouri, I think you would really like. He's not quite Rand Paul, but he's very close. Eric Schmidt. I fawn over him because he's so much more libertarian in that sense, and I think he is a Catholic, and I think you and he would get along. I hope that you two have an opportunity to meet and chat, and if you do, but please tell me, because I'd love to hear about it.
We were on a radio show together, but the host was sort of questioning us separately. So all I did was say, "It's nice to meet you." I didn't really know anything about him. If he has a libertarian strain in him, unlike his Missouri colleague who's trying to outdo Teddy Roosevelt, I'm happy to hear that.
Judge, Republicans are shocked when I call many of them out for being progressives. So many of them have forgotten the progressive history of the Republican Party. They don't know what it means. You know what their problem is, Judge? They haven't read Theodore and Woodrow by Judge Andrew Napolitano. They haven't read your books, Judge.
Yeah, how 2 American presidents destroyed constitutional liberty. When I want to split theological hairs, I get into arguments with like-minded people over who was the worst president, worst of the two, not worst ever. There's no question about who's the worst ever, but who's the worst of the two, Woodrow Wilson or FDR? And I've argued there would have been no FDR had it not been for Woodrow Wilson, who effectively created a fourth branch of the government, with the blessing of TR and those Republicans like your senior senator, called the administrative branch. And a wonderful guy by the name of Neil Gorsuch, who happens to sit on the Supreme Court of the United States, is on a jihad against the administrative branch because it's not in the Constitution.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Judge. I love reading revisionist history, and I do enjoy like Tom DiLorenzo's books about Abraham Lincoln and Alexander Hamilton, and I think it was Robert Higgs that wrote one about Winston Churchill, for example. And I did read Pat Buchanan's book about Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War. And while I don't agree with his conclusions that we would have been better off fighting with the Nazis against the Soviets, because I think that there's too many other factors that were involved, I think it's quite clear that if you hadn't fought in World War I, if there hadn't been Wilsonianism and making the world safe for democracy in World War I, then there would have been no World War II. And that statism and imperialism, as defined by Woodrow Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt, quite clearly was the cause of hundreds of millions of deaths in the 20th century.
Absolutely.
And we should have learned from those mistakes.
The Treaty of Versailles is the principal cause of World War II and the rise of Nazism. And whose brainchild was that monstrosity? Woodrow Wilson. Listen, I could tick off his ills, and irritate your audience. Before Woodrow Wilson, there was no federal income tax, there was no Federal Reserve, there obviously wasn't World War I. There was no administrative branch. The states were states; they were sovereign entities that could send their own senators to the Senate. But all that to change. The change in the progressive era is more rapid and effectual than the changes we're undergoing as we observe the American scene today, or so it appears.
On that subject, Judge, boy, I'm loving this conversation. History nerds abound. Definitely people need to read Theodore and Woodrow. You brought up this question of the income tax and the 16th Amendment. Donald Trump announced the other day that he would love to replace the income tax with tariffs, which was how the United States government was funded before 1913. It was on import taxes, if you will. Now, Judge, when I posted that article, I said, how about replace the income tax with nothing? Because of course I'm an actual libertarian, and I know that you are as well. But would it be superior to fund the government on import taxes over an income tax? Is that form of tax better in a way because it's on sales on actual activity rather than taxing human labor? I mean, is that a devil's bargain that you would take? Would you play that game with me, Judge, if you
Yeah,
could replace it?
I'll play the game with you. So the good aspect of that is the camel's nose is out from under the tent. The federal government is not monitoring your income, and thanks to who's that pseudo libertarian Milton Friedman, taking your money before you even earn it. He was the Treasury Department clerk that suggested that before he became the great Milton Friedman. To the extent that you wouldn't have to fill out a tax form, to the extent that that the government wouldn't be reaching into your paycheck, it would be a benefit. But I think that tariffs on everything would put almost everything you need out of reach. I mean, the federal government was funded not only by tariffs, it was also funded by user fees, and it was funded by assessments. So states were assessed, and the states could pay those assessments from their treasuries by selling bonds or by assessing the people in the states. And they did that by same thing, property taxes, user fees, and tariffs. The government was almost pay as you go again until World War One. Anything, I think, almost anything, a national sales tax would be superior to an income tax, just to the extent that it keeps the government out of your bank account. But there should be no tax by the federal government. It should go begging to the states for money when it needs it.
True libertarian stance, Judge. Oh boy, but can I go down a rabbit hole on this one? The audience is laughing, saying Milton Friedman getting a side shot from the judge, and they're laughing, and calling him a pseudo libertarian, the great Milton Friedman.
Well, he's a pseudo libertarian because he believed in central planning. He believed in the Federal Reserve. He did make a lot of libertarian sounding statements, and his book Capitalism and Freedom makes a lot of sense. But it would make more sense if the Federal Reserve weren't in it.
Oh God, there's nothing that libertarians hate more than the Federal Reserve, and certainly that's another topic for another day, Judge. I could talk to you about these things for hours and hours, Judge. I love these conversations. It's just so refreshing. But I have to hear about the terrific success of the Judging Freedom podcast, who you have coming up on the show, your weekly column that comes out every Thursday at judgenap.com. Tell us about who you have coming up on your wildly successful, about to pass 390,000 subscribers, I believe, Judging Freedom.
Yeah, we're at 389 and change. We grow about 30,000, about 20,000 a month. So my goal of 500,000 by Christmas is quite realistic. So as soon as President Putin made his statement offering terms of peace, Professor Sachs of Columbia called me up immediately. He goes, I'm on my way to Lisbon. As soon as I get to the hotel, I have to come on. And he came on, and 175,000 people jumped on to listen to him. I just finished interviewing Patrick Lancaster, the intrepid American journalist, right at the front lines between Ukraine and Russia. And later today, I have the great Professor John Mearsheimer. I have Matt Ho. You should know Matt, a wonderful young libertarian, former captain in the Marine Corps, former official in the Obama State Department, now a fierce anti-war activist and personal friend of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. And at 4:00 today, I have Aaron Maté. Later this week, Scott Ritter and Colonel Douglas McGregor and Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. Colonel Wilkerson was the chief of staff for Colin Powell, who now repudiates just about every foreign policy move that the Bush administration made.
Good stuff, Judge. And of course, your weekly column is every Thursday at judgenap.com, correct?
Yes. What happens if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? That's the column today. I was in a testy mood when I wrote it, as you can tell if you read it. It's not a happy column. What happens if the government is a myth? What happens if it's a fraud? What happens if it takes our money and spends it on itself? What do you mean, what happens? That does happen.
Taking inspiration from the great Ron Paul, the great Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, we are so thankful that you join us every Wednesday here bright and early in these mornings. These conversations are invaluable, and I think that future generations will look back on these when they look for guidance of true north liberty. Thank you for your time, Judge.
It's a pleasure, Austin. Until next week, my friend. All the best.
Thank you very much. Let's give the judge a round of applause. What say you? Looks like our friend Drummer Goy really enjoyed it. A great segment. You're not going to have conversations that include Pirates of Penzance, the Progressive Era, the 1913 amendments of the 16th and the 17th. You're not going to hear conversations about the Civil Rights Act and Barry Goldwater and about James Madison and the Constitution and anti-Italian discrimination, Sopranos references. You're not going to hear those kinds of conversations on any other talk show in the morning. So have you clicked that like button yet? Just a simple little like, or perhaps even click the follow button on the show that you're watching right now. If you're one of the 800 or so people who are watching us over on X.com, good morning and welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm Austin Peterson. If this is your first time watching the Wake Up America show, we're glad and thankful to have you here. We'd love it if you were a regular guest, hanging out with us Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. It's a 2-hour tour de force of the kinds of topics that you heard right now, and a lot of fun, silly stuff as well, because how can you wear shirts like this and not be a little bit goofball or madcap? For example, the next topic that we're going to move on to here in just a moment is to talk about the dating game, the relationships between men and women, and what men prefer in women. And it's just, there's not going to be any discussion about James Madison or all that kind of stuff. So Judge leaves and the IQ drops perhaps about 20 or 30 points. Wah, wah. But if you do enjoy those kinds of conversations, then be a regular guest. Join the judge every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Central Time. He comes on and he has that type of conversation with us. So if you want that kind of elevated debate and dialogue, you're not going to find that anywhere else but here on the Wake Up America show. So why not click the like button or share us with your friends? Give us a repost. If you're watching us on X.com, if all 800 people reposted the show this morning, we'd go viral and we'd probably have 10,000 people watching us. You can be a part of that multiplicative power, the power of math. Just a simple repost, sharing us with your friends on your timeline so they can hear those kinds of conversations. We'll be doing them and the cause of liberty and your country a big fat favor. And, well, it helps me out a little bit as well. Speaking of helps me out, the people who tune into the Wake Up America show for about almost 3 solid months have been unlocking our bonus content. So every single day, I produce a 5-minute mini documentary based on some concept or theme that I think people need to learn more about. Maybe it's a historical theme, or maybe it's a political philosophy theme. This week's theme has been political or philosophical paradoxes. And I've just been blown away by the amount of interest and support that people have shown for these 5-minute mini documentaries. It's a great way for us to monetize the show and give you guys a little bit of an incentive to want to support the Wake Up America show financially. And people like Andy Opperman and Robbie Theraman and L Dubs and people out there who watch the Wake Up America show, Urs Mommy and others, our friend Nancy and Joni Rankin, and I mean, too many people to count, have been financially supporting the Wake Up America show with their Rumble Rant donations and their purchases at apforlibertyshop.com. Not only are you helping us to grow the Wake Up America show and to grow our business, but you're also helping to grow a freedom family because, of course, my sweet little baby Hazel Peterson will be born here in, well, gosh, about a month from now. Little sweet baby Hazel Rose Peterson will be joining us here. Freedom Family Friday means that on Fridays, my smoking hot redheaded libertarian pregnant wife, Steffi, joins us on the program. And she was not super happy with some of the things that I was saying yesterday on X.com, but I think it was because she was a little confused. Of course, people are going to be confused. That's why we're going to talk about right now some of the questions surrounding the battle of the sexes. And when it comes to dating men and women, I think that it's very clear that men prefer young, beautiful virgins with no tattoos. Isn't that right, men?
How dare you?
L-Dub says it's been great seeing the show grow and how you've been making waves so quickly, Austin. Thank you, sir. Thank you. You better grab this article, pull it up. This is Bill Belichick. Let me find this. Bill Belichick with his girlfriend. He's all smiles in this photo of his first encounter with his girlfriend, Jordan Hudson. And she is quite the looker, we'll say. Here, let's take a look. Pull it up on my screen. This is sports discussion, sports entertainment, if you will. Bill Belichick appeared to be in great spirits aboard a flight with his now girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, according to a photo of their initial encounter published on Tuesday by TMZ. The ex-Patriots head coach, 72, his romance with the former cheerleader, 24, was revealed earlier this month. He could be seen wearing a Rutgers sweatshirt beside a smiling Hudson, who sported a white shirt. Here they are. Bill Belichick with his lovely young girlfriend. Isn't she beautiful? There they are. Here's Bill with his lovely, much younger woman. Of course, this prompted quite a response from people. Here she is. Very sweet, very pretty, brunette, former cheerleader, lovely lady, Bill Belichick's girlfriend. And you might be wondering, why, Austin, do you say that men prefer young virgins with no tattoos? Well, it's because it's true. Men do prefer, I hate those ads on the New York Post. They're so annoying. There we go. Here's Bill Belichick. And I got to say, Bill, congratulations. You found your happiness in your life. You've got a good woman. She seems age appropriate to me, right? Oh, no? You don't think that's age appropriate? Is there a problem? Is there a problem with this kind of a relationship? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Yesterday I tweeted this to have a discussion about this topic, and because I was inspired by it, that I do think it's wise in general for men to not get married young. Women should do the opposite. And the people are like, oh, double standards. Well, of course, we all recognize that there are double standards in the world. Men and women are different, right? And they want different things. And it was quite an outrage yesterday when I had posted that I thought it was wise for men to wait until they were in their 30s before they get married. And that when they do get married, that they should consider marrying a woman in their early to mid 20s. And that women who are in their early to mid 20s should consider marrying a man who is in their 30s. Because, of course, what is it? Men and women want different things. Isn't that the case? Right? But people were very angry with me. They were very upset. There were a lot of angry women who were forced, many of them. And there were lots of religious people like the Nazi Zoomer incels, right, of Fuentes fame, right? They were angry with me. No. You must tell the young men to get married early and the men should be virgins too. Not a good idea. And then I was also being lectured to by the conservative feminists, right? They're conservatives and they say that they're not feminists, but in reality, they're feminists, right? Because as soon as you start to criticize a woman's opinion about something in politics, as soon as you suggest that perhaps she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about, as soon as you say something like, a man should be like this, and here's what men think, and men have these kinds of preferences, those women go and grab themselves a Democrat ballot faster than you can say shit. Yes, they do. They run back to the Democratic Party so fast. They make a grift. They make a living, a nice living online by posing as conservatives and trad wives, but in reality, they end up just being feminists. So why is it a good thing for a man who is in his 30s to marry a much younger woman? And I recommend 7 to 10 years difference as sort of the minimum, right? So my wife, 7 years younger, and I would be lying if I told you otherwise, that one of the reasons why it was a good idea for me to choose a woman who's at least 7 years younger than me is because she's going to be able to still have children. And of course, I'm about to have my first child. And I'm 43 years old, right? So getting up there, right there in age as a man. So I just kind of hit that line. But of course, men can have children. I mean, you're Al Pacino. He's 80 years old, I think, and he just had a child with his wife. And you know what I say? Good for you, Al. Good for you. You're a happy man. You've been successful reproductively. Why are we going to rip on men for being successful in a reproductive way? Because when you look at the data, I was just reading this the other day. People were really upset when I mentioned this, but I was reading about this. And I see my friend Stephen Ruiz over there. He got married wrong. If you have the right person, it all works out just fine. It's true, Stephen. But you and Cindy were obviously the sweetest young sweethearts of all sweet and dumb. A lot of people who did what you did, though, their lives are not so happy right now. And you are the picture-perfect example of the high school sweethearts who made it. And I appreciate you. You are the exception to the rule. And I think that, what do exceptions do? They prove the rule. Am I right, Stephen? Hello, Cindy, by the way. You have a lovely family. But I would say that when it comes to men's happiness, you have to consider the historic trends. So 4,000 years ago, I was just reading this the other day, 4,000 years ago, the successful reproductive rate was 70 women to 1 man. Now ask yourself, what does that mean? Okay, so 4,000 years ago, when we were still sort of crawling out of the soup, right? We're not the primordial soup, but we're still sort of like in the earliest part of recorded history. DNA tells us that 70 women were successful in reproducing to about every 1 man. Now, things have changed. And in the modern era, it's about 7 women that are successful at reproducing to every 1 man. Now, when you say something like that, I think people don't consider the broader implications of what that means exactly. Right? And of course, people have this sort of nirvana fallacy that maybe there could be a system, or maybe there could be a society where it could be 1-to-1. That ain't never going to happen. Okay, because that goes against the biological programming that is innate, and it goes against female nature. What does it mean? Right? Ask yourself, what does it mean if at one point in time, 4,000 years ago, from genetic testing, we can see that 70 women were successful reproducers to every 1 man? And what does that mean today in the modern context? Well, there's a conversation that needs to be had around the world, around the word polygyny. Polygyny. Right? Dirty Mike over in the Rumble chat says he has kids to 3 different women. Does that mean I have 4 more to go? Very funny. Well, actually, Dirty Mike, you're actually proving exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, you have 3 more to go. What that means is that women are naturally polygynous. It's not polygamy, right? Not marriage, polygyny. Polygyny. G-Y-N-Y. What does that mean? L-Dub says harems were more of a thing back then. Yes, when it was 70 to 1, harems were more of a thing back then. But now harems really aren't a thing, except they kind of are. Right? They kind of are. Some of this stuff is delicate for me to discuss. I can say that there was a time when, I was dating a few different women, and maybe it was more than a few. Maybe it was a dozen. Maybe I had about a dozen different women that I had on speed dial, and we're dating, right? We weren't in serious committed relationships, but there was a time when it was about a dozen or so, and it was awesome. It was awesome. It was I never felt so amazing as almost as amazing as I do right now in my monogamous relationship with my one wife that I'm faithful to and I'm about to have my first child with. Basically, I've won at life, right? And I've won at life, and I look at young men now. Some of them are incels. Many of them are unhappy. Some of them have been divorced. You look at Dirty Mike, and he's had kids to 3 different women. Does that mean he has 4 more to go? Yes. But what it means is that women tend to prefer to share one high value man rather than be with a man who is of equal or lesser value. Yes, Justin, my brother, is over there saying, Lord have mercy. We're just talking about biological reality here. Let's see. So here's the question, right? And we're not talking about dating underage women here. We're not talking about any of that, although people will accuse you of that. As a matter of fact, yesterday, when I said 7 to 10 years younger is the minimum, but that, of course, you should date a woman who's of age, right, of legal age. People always throw out the pedophile accusations, and that is a female coping mechanism. Because as women get older and they age themselves out of the pool of potential mates, they want to shame men for our proclivities, right? Women are celebrated for their preferences and men are shamed for their preferences. Men prefer beautiful young women who are virgins with no tattoos. Can I get an amen? Is there a man who doesn't? Very few. Very few. Why? So if men prefer young, beautiful virgins who are fertile, who don't have tattoos, right? Why is that controversial for us to have a preference versus women being allowed to have their own preferences? They prefer men who are have of advanced means, are capable of taking care of them, are men of accomplishment, or someone that they're proud of, right? Who can, when they're 9 months pregnant and they can't, put the smoke detector up, they have a man who is strong enough and capable of doing so, which is why it's a good thing, I think, for there to be a good 7 to 10 year age gap minimum. Of course, she should be of age, right? She should be an adult. We're not talking about creeps or weirdos or perverts. It's not perverted for a 40-year-old man to be attracted to 20-year-old women. It's not. It's not perverted for a 50-year-old man to be attracted to a 20-year-old woman. It's not perverted for a 70, 80, 90, 110-year-old man to be attracted to a 20-year-old woman. We are never going to change female interests. Women are never going to say, well, I'm going to change my biology and I'm no longer going to be attracted. We're going to change women and we're going to make them no longer attracted to men who are wealthy or attractive or a little bit older and more experienced or accomplished or powerful. We're not going to be attracted to men like that anymore. We're going to be attracted to beta incels with no money, no car, and no prospects. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go out there and find ourselves every woman wants a beautiful mid to call her own, right? Right? No. Women date up. That's what Camellia and I were talking about yesterday. Hypergamy, right? So if that is the case, then men should not be shamed for their preferences of liking young, beautiful, fertile virgins with no tattoos. No tattoos. None. Zero. No tattoos, please. Ladies, don't get a tattoo. Don't, whatever you do. Would you put a bumper sticker on a Lamborghini? One listener texted in at our line at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open. You can tell us about the young, beautiful virgin with no tattoos that you married at 573-319-1586. Sonny texted into the show, and he says, my name is Sonny. I am 50, and my wife is 13 years younger than me and has no tattoos. Congratulations, Sonny. 13 years, I think, is a really good, see, because you're 50 right now, and she is 13 years younger than you. So, I mean, man, there you go. See, Sonny is killing the game. He says, we got married when she was 23 and I was 36. Well done, Sonny. We have 2 sons, and I have 2 faded, ugly tattoos. And now my boys know tattoos are stupid. Sonny, you win. It's perfectly normal for men to be attracted to young, beautiful virgins with no tattoos. I think that it's perfectly normal for women to be attracted to healthy, strong, agile men who have wealth or significant means and are ready to take care of a woman and can do so. And as a matter of fact, if you're in your early 20s as a woman, you're going to have a better chance finding a man that is ready to settle down than if you date a man who is older, because men in their early 20s are not looking to settle down. They're not looking to get married. If you're in your early to mid 20s and you want a good chance at a healthy long-term relationship and you want a family, you're going to do best looking for a man who's in his early to mid 30s, and he's going to be able to provide for you, take care of you. He's going to meet that sort of idealized, and we're speaking in generalities. It doesn't apply to everyone. Some people, the woman is older and the guy is younger, and you're exceptions to the rule, and that's perfectly fine. But in general, men prefer young, beautiful women with no tattoos. No tattoos. Now, like my friend over at AP for Liberty Shop, Angelo, here joining us, says, I'm 24. I can't imagine dating anyone younger than like 21. Okay, perfectly. That makes sense. But here's what I'm trying to say, my friend, is that what you should do is you should play the field, you should date and get experience, because women love men who have experience. They do. Now, you'll get a few like angry Christian girls in the chat who'll say, no, we don't want a man who's been around and who's dated and all that experience. Some of them are lying. And some of them are not. Some of them do want a young, immature man who has no experience and no job prospects like them. And you're going to hard scrabble and lift each other up by the bootstraps. And, it's 1886 in your lives. Okay, great. But, not everybody lives an Amish lifestyle, right? The Mennonites have their lifestyle and they're free to do as they please, right? But it's not 1886 anymore. Right. And women tend to prefer men who have a little bit of experience in their lives. So what are you going to do? You can't marry a guy who's your same age. What you should do, in my opinion, if you're a young man in your 20s, you can't obviously date a woman who's 7 to 10 years younger. Right? You're going to have to date a woman who's age appropriate, as you should. But that's going to help you get experience, because you're going to learn about what a crazy bitch is. Okay. You're going to learn about the crazy bitches and learn how to avoid them. You're going to know because there's nothing more dangerous to a man than a crazy woman. Right? She will ruin your life. She will ruin your world. I mean, Stephanie and I, we talk about some of my ex-girlfriends. I've told her all of my stories about all of my exes. She knows about all of them, right? And some of them are crazy. Some of them have reached out to her and contacted her and say, Austin's, and they're like, he's a bad guy. He's crazy, right? So that experience is going to guide you, because everybody in life needs a Stephanie. Right? You need yourself a smoking hot redheaded libertarian wife, but you're not going to get the smoking hot redheaded libertarian wifey unless you accomplish something in your life, unless you have that experience, unless you know what the crazy bitch is and how to avoid her in the wild, and how to find yourself a good redheaded libertarian wifey when you're ready to settle down, you're ready to find a good woman. Now, Austin, what does this mean? Right? What does this mean? If guys are playing the fields, then there's going to be all these women out there who, what do you mean? What's going to happen to them if they're not young and virgins and no tattoos? If guys are playing the field, the math doesn't work out. Correct. The math doesn't work out in my scenario. But what you're forgetting is that the math doesn't work out right now. Let's go back to that data that I was talking about earlier. Used to be 70 women reproductively successful to one man. Now it's 7 to 1. So right now the math doesn't work out. It's not 1 to 1. It's 7 to 1. 7 women to 1 man are successful reproductively. So we have polygamy now. But what I'm suggesting, the situation I'm suggesting, not everyone's going to be happy. There are going to be cat ladies. Listen, Ralston Purina is going to go out of business if we don't implement my system, because they manufacture cat food. And you know what? The world needs cat ladies. So not everyone is going to get a mate. Not everyone is going to be successful. But under my system, more men are going to be reproductively successful. In that system, so what we're doing is we're taking the 7 to 1 gap and we're making it maybe closer to a little bit to 3 to 1. You're never going to stop women from seeking out higher quality males, higher status males. You're never going to stop hypergamy. You're never going to stop gold diggers, okay? You have to accept that which you cannot change. Men have accepted that we're not going to change women's nature. They're going to want to date across and up. Accept it, man. We accept it. Women, you're going to have to accept the fact that men prefer young, beautiful women who are virgins with no tattoos. Am I right, men? Am I right? Am I right? Or am I right? So, since we accept that we cannot change people's biological preferences, And since we accept that both people's preferences, men have preferences, they prefer a young, beautiful woman with no tattoos who takes care of their children, has children for them, doesn't try and boss them around, lord over them, be a feminist, right? Go out in the streets, burn bras, be political, right? They listen to their husband, they take guidance from their husband, their husband is a leader to them, he's the head of the family, they respect him, they bring his slippers, they bring his pipe, right? All of those things, right? Like if you want to live that lifestyle as a man, right? And if you want a woman who's going to respect you, you need to be a little bit older, right? 7 to 10 years old is the minimum, right? 7 to 10 years older is the minimum. Okay, I'll get you the source on that data, Barney, there for a little while. There are exceptions, right? As LW78 is pointing out right now, there are always exceptions, but I am right on the general trends, right? AP for Liberty Shop over in the chat says that some tattoos are cool. Yes, that's fine for the women that you will be dating while you're in your 20s, my friend. But once you reach your 30s, you will recognize, because of the experience that you have dating lots of women throughout your 20s and enjoying your life and experiencing women and understanding what they're like, right? Avoiding the crazy bitches by the time you hit your 30s, and you're looking for your wife, you're looking for a woman with no tattoos. You're looking for a woman with no tattoos. And my friend Joni Rankin, I guess she might be triggered by this because she's sending me messages about statistics. Many Americans have engaged in age gap dating. Oh boy, we could just go on and on forever. Looks like we've only got a few more minutes left on the show. But here's the thing. If you are an old man like Bill Belichick, you can still get a beautiful young woman, because women, even if they are gold diggers, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, not every man necessarily wants to find a woman that he wants to stay with forever. So he's going to want a young, beautiful virgin with no tattoos. And that's fine. Bill Belichick should be allowed to engage in that type of behavior, just like she should be allowed to engage in behavior. People say he's predatory. I say she's predatory. Right? Of course, I'm kidding. Right? We shouldn't shame women for their preferences, right? Just like we shouldn't shame men for their preferences. But the road to happiness for more men, and this is a society that is destructive and hell-bent on destroying men in this society. It wants to throw them, the churches want to throw you into a marriage before you're ready, so that the family court system can chew you up and spit you out. Now, and we're getting all kinds of advice from Zoomer incel Nazis, and we're getting advice from bitter old women, and they're all telling us how the relationships should be and how they shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera. Why would you listen to bitter old women or Nazi Zoomer incels who are virgins? Why would you listen to those people? Why would you not listen to me? A man who, not only do I have a happy, healthy relationship, happy, healthy family, right? A growing family, a wonderful life, a wonderful wife, a wonderful home, right? I have not only that, but I have platonic female friends, lots of platonic female friends of whom I have no romantic interest in. And that's another question entirely. Is the question of platonic female friends as a man. That was another thing that really triggered them yesterday. I could go on. Would you like me to go on, is the question. Do I have time to go on? I'll tell you what, we've got about 5 minutes left on the Wake Up America show. I'm either going to end it abruptly or I'm going to continue it. If we can get either one purchase at apforlibertyshop.com in the next 5 minutes, or a Rumble donation in the amount of, I'll say, $20, then we'll continue on for at least another 15 minutes. And I'll talk to you about why men should have, even a married man, should have platonic female friends, and why that's a good thing for married men to have friendships, platonic friendships with women. If we can get a $20 Rumble Rant, I will continue this conversation, or if we can get any kind of a purchase at all in the next 5 minutes at apforlibertyshop.com. Otherwise, I will end the stream in about 4 minutes from now. Okay. So, men, if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your wife. Just kidding. If you're in your 30s, you will be happy as a man if you date a woman who is in her 20s to 30s. Oh, looks like L-Dubs wants this conversation to continue. Okay, so here's what I got to do. Very briefly. Since we're going to go over by 15 minutes, I'm going to play the bonus content here for you real quick, and then I'm going to go talk to the studio owners, make sure that 15 minutes is good. It should be fine. I'm just going to make sure that we do it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to continue the conversation over on our locals page, and I'm going to do one of those truck driving videos where you see somebody in the truck driving, and I'll do it on locals. So let me go do this. I'm going to play the bonus content for you. When I come back, I'm going to finish this conversation. We're going to talk about why it's important for men to have, even married men, platonic female friendships. We're going to talk about that. Enjoy the bonus content. We'll be right back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupamericashow.com.
The Wake Up America Show, our bonus content focuses on political and philosophical paradoxes. Today we look at the Ship of Theseus thought experiment. The Ship of Theseus, also known as Theseus's paradox, is a thought experiment that has fascinated scholars for centuries. It raises compelling questions about identity over time. Imagine a ship where each part is gradually replaced. Is it still the same ship? Theseus was a young prince in Athens, raised away from the kingdom. Upon learning his true identity, he set out to claim his birthright. Discovering his father paid tribute to Crete, Theseus volunteered to end the cruel practice of sending children to the Minotaur. Theseus embarked on the ship with other tributes and met Princess Ariadne of Crete. She gave him a ball of thread and a sword to navigate the labyrinth and slay the Minotaur. Theseus succeeded, saving the children and fleeing with Ariadne. However, at the island of Naxos, Theseus left Ariadne behind. Returning to Athens, he forgot to change the ship's sails from black to white, causing his father to believe he had died. In despair, King Aegeus threw himself into the sea. Theseus became king of Athens. The ship, now known as the Ship of Theseus, was preserved as a monument. Over time, its parts were replaced as they decayed, leading philosophers to question if it remained the same ship. Philosophers like Heraclitus and Plato debated the paradox. Plutarch describes how the ship, with all planks replaced, became a classic example of the identity puzzle. Is it the same ship if no original part remains? The thought experiment extends beyond inanimate objects to living beings. For instance, consider two photos of a person at different ages. How is the person in the photos the same, and how are they different if their cells regenerate over time? Heraclitus argued that everything is in flux, suggesting that identity is fluid. John Locke introduced the idea that memory links us to our past selves, proposing that identity is tied to memory rather than physical continuity. Thomas Hobbes added complexity by positing a second ship made from the discarded original planks. Which ship is the true ship of Theseus? This introduces the theory of transitivity, yet it complicates the matter further. Hobbes' ideas echo Plato's theory in the Parmenides, where one cannot be other or the same to itself or another. This argument adds depth to the duality of identity, a theme that continues to intrigue modern thinkers. The Ship of Theseus thought experiment appears in contemporary culture, notably in the TV series WandaVision. The show explores identity through the character Vision, who has a new body but retains old memories, and another with original parts but no memories. In WandaVision, Vision and White Vision discuss the paradox. Vision summarizes the thought experiment, questioning the identity of the ship with replaced planks. This mirrors Plutarch's ancient description, showing the enduring relevance of the paradox. The show further explores Hobbes' theory. Vision and White Vision discuss the idea of reassembling a ship from old parts, concluding that neither is the true ship. Both are the true ship, which parallels their own identities. Vision proposes that perhaps memories, the wear and tear, constitute the true identity. This suggests that the original ship, or vision, exists only in memory, aligning with Locke's theory that memory creates identity. WandaVision romanticizes the philosophical debate, underscoring that the paradox continues to engage minds from antiquity to today. The Ship of Theseus remains a vital topic in discussions about identity, prompting reflection and exploration across generations.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America Show. We are officially in overtime. Thanks, Urs, Mommy, and L-Dubs for those donations. And thank you to the owners of the studio, Scott Fawn and Kelton and Jarrett, for hooking us up. Jarrett, you're the man. Kelton, you're the man. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you. The audience appreciates you. We're going into overtime. The studio is fine. I can stick around for another 15 minutes. They got other shows that come in here and do shows as well. We are grateful to Scott Fawn of the Missouri Times for donating the studio space to us so we can bring you the Wake Up America Show and do things like go into overtime. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you, brother. Without him, boy, this would be a lot tougher to do this show. All right, so we're in overtime. We're going to continue the program. very briefly after these messages. After these messages, we'll be right back. Make sure to download the Rumble app. Once you download it, search for my channel and follow my channel directly on the app. That's going to make sure that you get a donation every time that we go live. You can click the link in the description or the pinned live chat to download the Rumble app on your phone. It's free. If you prefer to watch the Wake Up America show on the big screen, it's also available for Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, Roku, LG, and Samsung TVs. All you need to do is search for Rumble. Thank you very much to rumble.com. We appreciate you guys. We love Rumble. Doom, doom, yeah. All right, you guys wanted to continue the conversation? Well, you get, you're going to get. Here we go. We're talking about why men love young, beautiful, fertile virgins with no tattoos. Isn't that what we prefer, men? And it's okay to have preferences, is it not? Yes, we do. But a side conversation that was provoked last night when one gentleman by the name of Mr. Reality over on Twitter had posted this. He said that a married man should not have female friends, nor should a married woman have male friends. Acquaintances, fine. Friends, no. See, I completely disagree. And as you can see, I disagreed publicly on my X post yesterday when I said married men without female platonic friends are going to be less successful in life and business. Men should be able to have healthy relationships with adult women that are not their wives in order to secure business contracts, since, of course, most corporations and governments are run by Girl Boss Inc. LLC. You know what I'm saying? Yes, so let's go back in this conversation. Yes, men should have you should have platonic relationships with adult female women because I'll tell you this, a lot of people were saying things like, oh, well, a man can't keep it in pants. All he thinks about is sex, blah, blah, blah. Well, women are the same way. Women are primarily sex-driven as well. Yes, men and women are different, but we both, we may want different things, but we both want each other if we're heterosexual, obviously, right? So we're both sex-driven. And we want different things out of a relationship, correct. But in the modern reality that we live in this dating world, this is a world in the United States, at least in Western culture, that is a gynocracy, right? It's female-dominated, very matriarchal. And men who want to survive are going to be able to have relationships, platonic relationships with adult female women. Why is it important for men who are married to maintain platonic friendships with women? Because you're going to need them not only for business relationships and contracts. I have multiple platonic female friends that are not my wife and that I keep around not just because we're friends, but because we also network together. We do business together. Camellia is a perfect example of this. Camellia and I she joins us every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Wake Up America show. So she's helping my business. I'm helping elevate her public profile, right? My hope is that I'll finally twist her arm into doing a podcast for the Wake Up America show. You should put some pressure on her too. As well as my brother. We need to get him started on that one. Thankfully, I do have someone else who's stepped up and contacted me, and we may be launching another new podcast soon, and it looks like they're going to get their stuff together before Justin and Camellia. You know what I'm saying? Come on. Let's get their act together. But platonic female friends, you're going to need them not just for business relationships, but in the era of Me Too, you need platonic female friends. I'm talking to the men right now. If you are a married man and you can't see yourself following the Mike Pence rule, for example, right? Not all of us are going to be able to be as lucky as Mike Pence in his career and be able to, not be alone with a woman for dinner or drinks or what have you, right? That's not his wife, right? Not everybody's going to be able to follow that Mike Pence rule. We live in a matriarchy, a gynocracy. You're going at governments and corporations largely run by women. And women, who do they hire? Have you ever worked under a female boss, men? Have you ever had a female boss or, the HR department run by ladies? Who do they promote? Their friends, right? They're not looking for the best person. They're looking for their friends. They want to elevate people that they like. So how are you as a man supposed to get ahead in this world and you got to follow the Mike Pence rule all the time? right? You can't make friends with a woman because you got to follow some strange, strict code that's made up by somebody and nobody cares about, right? They don't care about you, men. You know who does care about you? This guy, AP. I care about you, okay? I want more men to live happy, healthy, fulfilling lives and have great careers and have beautiful, young, smoking hot, redheaded libertarian wives that they can have babies with. It's a great life. I've had a wonderful, an amazing life. It's an incredible life. Not everybody can do what I've done, but I'll tell you, if you follow the simple rules, then you too can have a great life. And one of the rules that I've had in my life is that it is totally possible for men to have platonic friendships with women, even women that you've actually dated in the past and you no longer date anymore. But that's even a more controversial subject, and we'll talk about that later. But should married men have female platonic friends? Yes, not just because the only way you're going to get ahead at work is by pleasing your female bosses, and your female bosses are not going to promote you if they don't think of you as your friend. We're friend. I like him. He's nice. He's my friend. He's my friend. I'm going to hire him because he's my friend. Yes, if you want to get ahead in the business world, you better make sure that your female boss thinks that you're her friend. Erd's mommy, who's joining us right now, who is the exception to the rule, is trying to convince us that she's the rule, and she's not the rule. Donna, I love you. You're a wonderful woman. You're a girl boss, and you would hire someone who, of course, well, that's why you're hugely successful. That's why you're wealthy, is because you don't think like a lot of women, and you are a actual girl boss, not a girl boss, right? Not like, She-Hulk TV show would have us think of as a girl boss. You're not twerking in your office, right? Right? You're not, it's not the trappings of girl boss. You're a real girl boss, right? An actual boss. You're a girl who's a boss. It's different, right? I'm talking about girl boss, right? And if you want to get ahead in business, in these bullshit corporate worlds that many of us have to deal with, that God, I escaped from them, and you want to please your HR bosses and you want to please your bosses, have you not seen it? The cliques that emerge around these female bosses in these institutions, right? If you're not in the clique, if you're not their friend, you don't get ahead. Female bosses, right? Female bosses. But not just for the corporate benefits. It's not just about being able to advance in the workplace or getting a job. It's also about Me Too. It's also about the era of Me Too. Once I was working at an institution, I'm supposed to say essayed, but I don't care. I was sexually assaulted by a woman. That woman, drunk, whatever, right, put her hands on me. And thankfully, I had female friends. She, the next day, in order to counter any accusations that might have come at her, accused me. My boss stuck his head in the office, said, "You're being accused of sexual assault. You're being accused of this," and stuff like that. Like, there's an investigation that's going to be launched. I mean, you don't know. If you've never had something like that happen to you, like, it'll change you. Okay, it'll change how you feel about things and the amount of power as a man that you do not have, that men have no longer, just on the basis of a simple accusation. Hashtag believe all women. Okay, we're supposed to believe all women. All right, what about the ones that lie? Okay, and it was the female platonic friends that I had, and I think I had a girlfriend at the time, right? It was the female platonic friends that I had that stepped in immediately to save my bacon, that stepped in and said, I saw what went down there. And actually, the story is a complete 180 from what you've been told. And by the end of the day, the accusation had fallen apart. Hashtag Me Too. Adult married men need to cultivate platonic relationships with women who are not their wives for business and for self-defense, because no one's going to believe you if it's just you. They're not going to believe you, men. You need witnesses. You need female friends, because female opinions are the only currency that actually spend in this messed up world that we have lived in. But if you follow my advice, if you listen to your boy AP, who loves you, who cares about you, who has a very healthy relationship with his wife, very healthy friendship with lots of women, very healthy platonic friendships with lots of women, who has a great life, great wife, great home, great career, you listen to a guy like myself who does care about you, then I think you're going to be much better off. Don't listen to the incels. Don't listen to the women's opinions about who you should or shouldn't marry. Right? Come to the man who made it work, the man with the plan. That's me, AP. Have I offended you all today? Enough? Did you enjoy the show? Thank you for going overtime. Yes. Protect your character, right? Protect your life, protect your career, protect yourself. It's the Wake Up America show. Nowhere else are you going to have a conversation about James Madison and Barry Goldwater and civil rights and discrimination and Catholicism, and then talk about life and sex and hot young women, older men who like to date hot young women who are virgins with no tattoos. It's the Wake Up America show. And it's only the Wake Up America show. There is no other show. I'm the only show. There is no other show that brings you that kind of conversation anyway. So click that like button and follow us before you leave. And come back and join us tomorrow. Thirsty Thursday is going to be very, very thirsty. Tomorrow's show. Whew. I'm already sweating thinking about it. All those platonic female friends of mine joining us here. 3 beautiful platonic friends of mine will be joining us here on Thirsty Thursday. For your pleasure, gentlemen. Enjoy. We'll be seeing you tomorrow here. Don't forget, exit through the Grift Shop, ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. I hope that you enjoyed it today. If you did, exit through the Grift Shop. Get yourself something real nice. Support the cause of economic freedom, personal liberty, and of standing up for the rights and qualities of the superior male on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Bye, guys.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor of your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights, where every note tells a story. We embrace all singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit petersonvoicestudio.com and sign up for remote lessons tailored just for you. Let's begin this melodious journey together.
Tired
Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP for Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your Founding Flavors at apforlibertyshop.com.